Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crafty Chat episode 23. My name is Nancy. I'm here again with Heidi and Lucy. We've got a couple of things we're going to talk about today. First off is
local yarn stores.
Thank you, local yarn stores. There's a group that runs a local yarn store day. It's a national, actually it's an international at this point, festival of sorts. It's a single day which highlights your area local yarn store instead of like a big box store like Joann's or Michael's, to encourage folks to purchase and support local businesses as well as small businesses and hand dyers. So this year it was supposed to be in April, but due to COVID, the council that runs that holiday pushed it to September. So it was on September 12th. It's a Saturday. But there were a lot of digital events that were run instead of something in person. So instead of encouraging folks to go to your local yarn store, it was order from your local yarn store or purchase this pattern that's been released by a local pattern maker. One of the people that I follow regularly who does a lot of this is Casapinka, and she released a pattern called Hug Shot that was super, super cute. And it's named after, I think Hug Shot might have been something different. Now I can't remember. I think she might have done Hug Shot for a different holiday. But anyways, she premiered that pattern that day, and then also the one for the Empower People project, which is a craftivism project aimed at uniting crafters to encourage political engagement and voting and involvement in social activities. So those two things were on my list of cool things. And then I visited a local yarn store later, just a couple weekends ago. But did you guys see anything for local yarn store day, or have you seen it before I go into my long tirade about the store that I went to?
I completely I don't even remember now. That was like a month. It was a month ago. Yeah. And I think I remember it coming, and then I somehow missed it. So, but I did go to a local yarn store this weekend. So,
ooh, where'd you go?
I went to Spun in Ann Arbor. Initially, I just wanted to get needles, but then they had an email where they released a kit for a pattern called Silver Wing. And so I was like, oh, I want to look at the yarn. And then I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to buy it because it's a one skein shawl. So I bought the kit, and then I had to buy another set of needles as well. And then I bought another pair of little embroidery scissors. So, but this is the yarn that I chose. Oh, yeah, it's really pretty. It's like a fingering weight, I believe. So, superwash merino, which is always just has nice drape. So I'm excited to do that. So
great colors.
The leg warmers I was totally going to get started on. I think I'm going to work on this instead. Impulse buy. I got to do it now.
I did finally cast on for my leg warmers that I was going to do in the summertime. So those I've started, but I have a quarter of an inch done with them. There's nothing interesting on them yet. So
yeah, I bought some this was the mandala yarn was on sale when I was at Joann's to buy. I wanted to get one thing, right? Of course. And I'm like, oh, it was 50% off. So I was like, well, I'll get a couple skeins, and it just seems like a nice acrylic for a leg warmer. So
yeah, and I like their gradients are really, really good. They don't jump in colors. So
yeah, it looks like it'll blend really nicely. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually this is my first kit though. Because you know me, I rarely work with a pattern. Well, with knitting I do, because I don't know enough about what I'm doing really, but it's well, almost. I did make that pink scarf without really a pattern, but that was just a stitch pattern to follow. So,
yeah.
So this is the first time I bought a kit. Although really the kit was just here's the yarn and here's the pattern. So not really a kit, in my opinion, because I could have bought the pattern myself off of Ravelry. It was all the same price. So it's like,
Yeah. But I'm sorely tempted by kits. So like, especially when I'm in a store, that was the store that I went to had a couple kits where I was just like, oh my God, your color choices are so good. I want this. Like, no, I can't. I ended up buying a lot of other yarn. I was like, I don't need to buy the kit. So. How about you, Lucy?
Well, I bought the yarn, the kit, except for the needles, but the yarn and the pattern for Spun's knit along. They do a knit along and crochet along every fall, or they have for a while. So, but this started on, let's see, September 18th. And I think I got the yarn pretty much right away. Mm-hmm. I haven't started at all. It's a cowl. It's called the chirrup. The chirrup cowl, that's the knitted one, and the crochet one is called it's a perfect size ribbed cowl. So, but what I didn't even actually go in there. I called them because they're so friendly and nice. And I just said I wanted to order this. I wanted to do this knit along. And he just picked, because it's 2 different skeins of yarn. One of those like the crazy kind of mixed colors. It's a Michigan yarn, and then another color, a solid color to go along with that. So he just picked them for me, which was kind of fun. And then, because I really like the colors, and then I just picked it up. It's a great experience to do it that way too. Even though they were open, I just felt like that I would rather just do that kind of curbside pickup. And they just have a little table outside their store and had my name on it. So it was very nice, but now I need to start it. It ends in January, which is not soon, but not soon.
Not far off. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was just because I wanted to do something that be part of something that other people were doing. So I think they also offer you get entered into a drawing when you buy it. And then if you finish it by the date, you get entered into another drawing for gift cards for their store, which is always nice. Yeah. But that was the only local yarn store that I did any business with around local yarn store day.
That was the store that I've been sorely tempted by knit-alongs, especially while working from home. I've been seeing a lot of them, and that's why I've been getting confused about local yarn store day, because as COVID goes on, and as a lot of these stores aren't opening, I'm seeing more and more stuff come across my social media of like, make sure that you're supporting your local stores so that they can continue to be open and provide the services that they have. So like, it's almost like for me, local yarn store days never ended. It's been constant through the last 3 or 4 months, especially through the last 3 or 4 months. But the one that really, really tempted me was Stephen West's Mystery Knit Along. He does one every year. And I've loved his shawl designs for the last 4 or 5 years. This one, I really, really wanted to do. But I have so many other projects going on, and I've been watching the clues as they're released, and it's just such a gorgeous shawl. And I'm so excited to see what it looks like when it finishes. And I'll probably work one later on, but I'm still working on his Mystery Knit Along shawl from like 4 years ago. That one's still in progress for me. So I'm like, I need to finish that one first before I do another Stephen West pattern. But I love his designs, and those are really gorgeous. I took a friend 2 weekends ago, which would have been the beginning of October. On October 10th, actually, was supposed to be the day for the Ann Arbor Fiber Expo. But it was, of course, canceled this year. So we went to a store in Livonia called the Michigan.
It was also We Love Yarn Day, or I Love Yarn Day was October 10th. So how fitting.
Was, yeah. So, and she came to me and was like, I want to learn how to knit again. And I was like, oh, yes, I'm here for this. I closed my tab. Shoot.
I know, and I can't remember the name of it either. I know where it is.
Oh, okay, there we go. So the store that we went to was Michigan Fine Yarns. It's in Livonia. And it was the best yarn store I have ever been to. Their collection is extensive. The store is huge. And I was so geeked when I walked in there to see how big it was. We were going to go to Spun, but I had a little bit of a misgiving because I like to feel the yarn and I like to be able to like wander around and browse because I'm very scattered when I'm shopping for yarn. And Spun said on their website that they were doing things more general store style of like you can pick the ones that you want to handle and do it from there, where I didn't want to force somebody working there to follow my logic or be able to like jump around with me. And I take a lot of time and I kind of agonize over things and, just take forever in yarn stores. But it was really cool because
I'm sorry
No,
to
go ahead.
interrupt you, but my experience there on Saturday was pretty much a free for all. So I don't
Okay.
know what changed, or maybe it's just because it was so busy. There was a few people that I could tell they were regulars because they, were chatting with each other and like they were just walking around with their skeins and just, and she pointed me to where like this yarn was, and it was like just, check it out, feel things if you need to,
Okay.
I guess. So
that's good to know. Well, I've been wanting to go to Spun for a while because I like the store and they have the types of needles that I like. So I was going to go buy a couple different sizes of needles that I don't have. And that would have been my preference because they have a lot of bamboo and wood needles, where Michigan Fine Yarns really had all metal needles. So that wasn't really my speed. And it was so funny with this shop because they've had a booth at the Fiber Expo for the past 2 or 3 years. And I wasn't blown away by their selection. And I think just what they chose to bring was not quite my speed, not quite what I was looking for. But I found so much on my visit that I loved. I was going to get my friend Brittany her starter stuff and to get the rest of the yarn that I needed for my Soldotna crop. That I have 2 of the colors for, and I needed 2 more colors. So I ended up finding a really bright turquoise, a dark kind of blue pink, and a teal. So these are going to go with a white variegated or white speckle that looks like candy spring, like funfetti cake.
Nice.
And then a neon pink. And I haven't quite decided which of these 2 I want to use for the color work with it, but they were just so pretty. And I'm trying to expand my stash of DK yarn. So the Soldotna crop is a double knit weight yarn instead of fingering. I have a lot of fingering yarn. I don't have a lot of DK. So that was my goal, was to get more DK. And then I saw these 2.
Wow.
That are fingering.
Nice.
And the fall colors have been really spectacular this year. That was our drive to Livonia. We took the back roads from Ann Arbor to Livonia, and it was a spectacular drive. I actually took my husband on that same drive the next day because it was so pretty. And we do a lot of fall color drives in the fall. So I saw those and was just like, well, I have to have them because they're gorgeous. So. But no, they were super friendly and super nice. The store was split up half and half, acrylic and natural fibers, which made browsing so easy. It was all organized by weight. I just can't rave enough about the store. Their color selection was amazing. And I had so much fun. It was great.
I'm excited to go there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. But because there are a lot of local yarn stores around the Ann Arbor area and like Metro Detroit area. That one was there. A lot of them are smaller though. That was the biggest one that I had been to. And then I follow on my social media one in Grand Rapids called Michigan Fiber Studio. And their store is huge, but that's also, they serve the entire Grand Rapids area. And I've wanted to go there for a while, but I just haven't been. My husband's family's from Grand Rapids. We usually only go for 2 or 3 days at a time when we do go, so we don't always have a lot of time for me to go yarn shopping. So,
you know what I don't find? There was one store once in Farmington, which I don't even know if it's still there, and they did have some like threads or finer for like embroidery or like the yarns for embroidery, which I don't really seem to find.
I have only seen one yarn store that also has needlework and embroidery threads, and that was in Fort Myers, Florida, when my mom and I were on vacation. And they had a substantial selection. Most of it was wool and silk, not a lot of cotton, so they didn't have any DMC, but it was all hand dyed.
Nice.
colors, and they were gorgeous. So I've only seen that once. It's not, but there is a cross stitch store in Grosse Pointe, I think, that is specifically for cross stitch. That blew me away.
Wow,
I took a visit, just kind of wander around and see, because I'd never been to Grosse Pointe. And just down their main drag was this adorable store with all these cross stitch in the windows, and it was a Sunday, so they were closed. And I was like, someday I'm gonna go back there.
Yeah, there used to be a store in Dearborn that was like all needlework stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're still around anymore either. This is like from my childhood, so I don't know.
It's not something that you see stores catered to as much anymore. I remember my mom talking a lot about stores like that growing up.
Yeah, I used to work at a needlepoint store when I was like newly married. I mean, I'd worked there before that too, in Boston. That one's still there. There were a couple others in Boston, but yeah, and that was just needlepoint. I mean, you could come in and get the fibers for anything, but like the canvases we sold were just needlepoint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a certain price point to that,
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, that might be why things like that are not around as much anymore.
I think so. And as the market's kind of been cornered by crafting stores, it gets a little more unusual. I am seeing a lot of folks that are dyeing their own Aida cloth for cross stitch, though. So like that's kind of a vogue thing online for some of the crafting social medias that I follow. And it's cool to see their stuff. So, yeah. But that was definitely, yes. Check out, do a Google search for your own area and yarn store, and you will get a lot of hits. There's between 8 and 12 in central and southeastern Michigan. And then there's more elsewhere.
Yeah, there's one in Milan I just noticed, or I'd forgotten about maybe, but I've never been to. I don't know if I guess you haven't been there either.
No, I haven't. That did show up on my search. I don't remember why we chose, I think we chose Michigan Fine Yarns because the store looked bigger. Mm-hmm. And my friend was looking for something very, very specific. So she wanted a rainbow yarn that was a little bit more muted jewel tones, which she actually found. And I could not believe that we got that lucky, because I don't generally see a lot of rainbow yarns outside of like shopping online. But I guess it's becoming more popular and more common to see those rainbow colorways. Which is great.
Awesome. So the second thing we were going to talk about was podcasts we listen to, right? While we're crafting.
Yeah. That's I think we talked a little bit about it at some point, but there's new stuff that I'm listening to. Mm-hmm. So for a while I was there's a knitting podcast a lady in the UK does, she goes by Dunder Knits on YouTube and all over social media, and she's adorable and hysterical, and I love her sense of humor. She does, for folks that are interested in getting into her stuff, she is on hiatus right now because she's moving, but she will be back, and she has a lot of back episodes. It is a swearing friendly podcast for folks that prefer not to have a lot of swearing. That tickles my sense of humor. So, and she does talk a lot about how frustrating some projects are, and she does a wide range of finished objects, and she's got like specific segments, so she's very fun. And then I know Lucy's been listening. I'll let you talk about Jacob's.
So I just finished the most recent episode. I've listened to all the episodes of The Gayest Generation, which is an AADL.org podcast. It's done by Jacob Gorski, and it is so good. I highly recommend it. He interviews people in the LGBTQ community who are are older, like mostly in their 60s and 70s. So it's a generation that hasn't really had a voice, a lot to talk about how things were for them. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, I was telling Nancy earlier, like I was on a walk listening to it. So I do listen to it while I'm crafting, but also it's like so good that I couldn't stop. But I'm like laughing, to myself, crying at one point. So if anyone like saw me, they would think I had something going on, but he does a really great job. He's got a great interview style, and I've just really been enjoying that one. So it doesn't have anything to do with crafting, but it's just, I don't know, it's nice to listen to right now while I'm crafting. All the other podcasts I listen to are mostly just either about books that are coming out, books that have just come out, books people read. So like the New York Public Library has a really good podcast called The Librarian is In that I like. And there's a couple on the book Riot does a lot of podcasts that are great too for books, if you like listening to books. But I don't really listen to craft podcasts while I'm crafting. So
yeah, a lot of the podcasts that I end up listening to are all video podcasts. So I'm watching them while I'm listening to them. So most of mine are more tilted that way, but there's very few crafting or knitting podcasts that I listen to regularly. Another one that I picked up was a couple ladies in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's the Woolies Podcast. And it's Bree and Haley out there. And I love Haley's aesthetic. She's like super goth and does a lot of really cooler type knits, which is like my goal. And I love her style and I love the stuff that she creates. And Bree's more on the other end of things where she does a lot of weaving and a lot of her color palette is a little bit more bright or pastel. So the juxtaposition of those two together is adorable and very, very fun. And they're good friends and I like listening to them talk about the stuff that they're working on. And then they did highlight in the last couple episodes local yarn crawls that they've gone on in Pittsburgh or things that they've done locally in their area. So that's an interesting perspective to get for them. And then I think the only one that I end up listening to is a friend of mine in Pontiac runs a geeking podcast called the Imaginos Workshop. He talks a lot about comics and movies, TV shows, things that are more fandom related. And that's really fun to listen to his perspective on. I mean, he has a lot of guests that he brings on and a lot of different people that he talks to. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. He's got like 70 or some odd episodes. I'm only on like episode 5. So I'm going back through and listening to them, but it's been a good time. I really like it.
Nice. Yeah, I don't always. I kind of ask the question. I'm like, well, what do you listen to while you're crafting? And I'm like, I don't even know, because I do tend to use my podcasts more for going on walks. But yeah, I agree. I've been enjoying the Gayest Generation, especially because they are long. I remember somebody asked me, they're like, is it just the same person for the whole episode? Because like they hadn't listened to the whole thing. I'm like, yeah. And they get to tell their incredible, like their life story. And I'm like, I love the length of it because, I'm using it while I'm doing something. So it keeps me in one place working. So that's why I do enjoy podcasts. And I enjoy them more than audiobooks. Because I just sometimes will stop paying attention to an audiobook. I don't know.
There's not a lot of like.
Yeah, maybe because they're more conversational or something. I just, but that said, I used to listen to Mission to Zix, which is a radio theater, like sci-fi. It's really funny. I don't know. It's been a while since I've listened to it. There's a lot of seasons. I'm like way behind. I'm probably in like season 3 and there's at least like 6 maybe, or I don't even know. So that's a really fun one. And they're usually like around half-hour episodes. So those work out really well. And then I like, there's some shorter ones that are like more like 20 minutes that I like, Side Door, which is by,
we talked about this when we talked about our virtual museums, didn't we?
I think that's where I learned about it. Yeah. So that one's been.
Yeah, I love Side Door.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. You never really know. Like, there's so many different, a wide variety of topics and people and history that they talk about. So
yeah,
that one's really cool. And I like the 20,000 Hertz, which is all about sound, like audio production and sound engineering and that kind of thing. So that's always really, really a fascinating one. But yeah, it's like how the only crafts podcast I regularly probably listen to is the Serious Craft. Oh my gosh, totally forgot what it's called. I have to look at my phone. That's terrible. What do you guys call yourselves? Very Serious Crafts. So there's,
Okay.
yeah,
they're on my list of ones that I would like to listen to.
And then there's another one, YouTube one I found recently called Sit and Knit for a Bit. And it's these two guys I think they're in Norway. And they're just, I don't know, they're really
funny. I watched a video about sock making from them a while ago. A podcast episode. So yeah. No, they were awesome. And they had a lot of really good advice. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah,
I saw from
like
them.
all over the place. Oh, and there's one more I do listen to is the yoga praxis, which is Raina Legrand, who's local. She started doing a podcast where she's interviewing different people, usually people who have taught yoga or have some experience or just, I don't know. So just kind of talking about yoga. So
very fun. Yeah, that's
it's been nice because everybody's like during COVID, like, yeah, I had all this pressure to do yoga and I haven't really been doing yoga at all. And it's okay. It's just like, we're all kind of, I mean, not everybody, but it's like a lot of us are in that place where it's like, yeah, I'm like stepping away from like having to have this like yoga. Like, you know, I go 4 times a week having all this schedule. And so, yeah.
That was, I actually picked up yoga in quarantine. I haven't been doing it as regularly the last 2 months, but I found Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube.
Yeah, I
love her. She's
everybody does. Yeah.
Well, and it's also just like my husband and I love dogs, and her dog Benji is on almost every episode, and it's just like
she goes like, stop and pet your dog.
Yeah,
okay.
That's
like
nice.
Apologizes to him every time she bumps him. It's just so cute.
It's nice to have that looseness and not that heavy focus. Like I think I went away from yoga because honestly, it's like it would just bring up too much, or there's too much of an internal focus. Like I couldn't, like it wasn't helping me.
No.
So it was actually making things almost worse. I mean, physically it was helping, and it would help a lot more because I'm like, we were doing all that embroidery and I have like all this like arthritis.
Oh, I know that embroidery was, gosh,
it was the worst.
Yeah.
I don't have the muscles for this. So yeah.
I've been doing yoga with Adrienne we're going to go on a yoga thing, me back into yoga during quarantine because of her attitude, you know, she had like a 30-day thing. But then I've been doing Fight Master yoga with Leslie Fight Master, who has the same she's very, she's a little bit more, I would say she moves a little bit more at a little bit of a quicker pace than Adrienne sometimes does.
Okay.
But that's sort of what I was wanting. But then she also is reminding you that yoga is really about like what's going on in your head more than what's going, you know, it's very important to pair the two. And she has a quote that she does at the end of everyone when you're in Shavasana. It's always really nice. And she has so many videos. But yeah, it is funny that like we're moving, I'm going to bring this back around to podcast somehow. Removing like the pressure to be in a group situation, like a physical group situation. Maybe that's why people have gotten into it in doing videos in their own home like this. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember how I was going to bring that back to podcast.
Well, all I can say is at first I felt like I kept getting stuff in my feed about like everybody doing yoga. Like we're still like still together, though we're apart. Like we still have the mind of like, we're doing this thing. And it's like, I was like, no, it was almost too much. I was like, I got kind of turned off. I'm like, I am not going to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's like people kind of quarantining at you, you know, like I am baking bread. I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And I have cleaned out everything in my house.
Oh, I fully.
Somebody else just
I have a daily schedule and it's this, and you're just like, oh.
I thought that was funny. I saw Nancy baked a loaf of bread. She's like, oh my God, I'm all about bread. And I'm like, you're a little late to the game.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm way late. No. Well, it was, I'm way late.
Good. That's good. That's okay. You didn't want to be in the competitive bread.
I'm growing my sourdough starter.
Mm-hmm.
He's on day 4 and he hasn't done anything. Like day 2, he doubled twice. And really fast, so I had to like kind of slow him down. I don't know. I'm having some sourdough starter struggles, but my normal yeast bread went amazing. And I've been putting off making bread for years because I was just like, I can't do it. It's too much. And that was my husband looked at me. He's like, I want to learn how to make bread. Let's do that together. So we ended up doing it, and it was so much fun. I had a really good time with it.
It might just be that the cooler weather has slowed your starter. Like, and I don't know if when you started it, we had some like humid days, and like, so weather can really affect. That's why everybody's going crazy with it, right? Because it was like the start of spring and summer, and sourdough was just like exploding.
You couldn't find yeast anywhere in the stores.
I need yeast. That's the nice thing with sourdough. You use the natural yeast in the air.
Yeah, and that was
and the yeast was like on the list of things that you couldn't find along with toilet paper.
Yeah.
And disinfectant.
Because there were so many people making bread. And that was, I feel a little guilty about like quarantining at people, because I like
you're not now. That was
I like posted the bread. And then today I'm gonna post a big thing on Instagram of all the projects that I've finished in the last 4 days, because I finished a bunch of stuff like sewing related. I was like, I'm sorry. I got a funny jibing text from a friend of mine of like, would you slow down and stop doing things so much, because I'm feeling like really unproductive. And she was teasing me about it, but I was just like, I'm so sorry. I was just really excited about how well the bread came out. That was
I think that's definitely worth bragging about. I'm just talking about like, there was a point, I think, when people couldn't anticipate the longevity of things.
Yeah.
And so they didn't pace themselves, and they were just super enthusiastic right out of the gate. Like, I don't think you see so much. There's not so much quarantining at other people anymore, because
no, I don't think so. Well, it's as time has gone on and we're all getting more and more tired, I think it's just kind of like slowing down a little bit, which for me, I felt that because like right when I went into quarantine, it was like, I've got all this time, I'm going to do all of the things. And then I just like emotionally was fully not prepared to do anything. So I just kind of like,
I think we talked about that in some of our earlier episodes, how we all had these, like, we felt this pressure to be doing, to be crafting, and you kind of have this emotional paralysis, like you just don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Well, I have
people are more back to work too. Like a lot of people that weren't then, are back to work now, and you don't have, and your kids are going to school, whereas initially they were home, and you're like, we got to do the things. And that's why everybody's like, we're going to watch documentaries, and we're going to bake bread, and we're going to plant a garden. And it's like, okay. Right.
Yeah.
It was inspiring to see that from other folks. I think because I was so emotionally exhausted and anxious early into quarantine, I didn't see as much of it because I was kind of just like block, like, or just not even looking at my social media at all, because I just couldn't handle it.
Well, no, on the one hand, it could give me hope that there was other people out there that were like doing okay, like they had energy to like do stuff, and I can sit back and watch. That's fine. I don't have to be the one doing the thing.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
But okay, so like with podcasts though, I love how I like throw out ideas and then I'm like, yeah, I don't really listen to them. I often throw out these ideas. I'm like, I'm so excited about talking about this thing that like I don't really do, but I know you guys do. But I don't know. I feel like I don't get to my podcasts as much.
I don't. Mine stack up. I have like 12 probably on my phone that I'm subscribing to. That I'm like,
leaving like NPR on, which is probably not great. But
I like to be at the most recent, like if someone puts one out, especially depending on, like if it's a book podcast, like I like the New York Times book review podcast, because it keeps, you don't have to actually read the whole book review then, because they're kind of like talking about it for you.
That's your trick.
Yeah. But then if I get behind, I want to do the one that correlates to the book review that I just got. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're just like, oh, I'm behind.
Yeah, okay, I feel compelled to like get from the beginning, like to know the history, to know like the development of the character of the podcast or something.
Yeah. Well, it's like I watch and listen to the Critical Role podcast every week, and like I'll watch the first half of it when it airs on Twitch, and then I'll listen to the last half of it the Monday after on, either on YouTube or on my phone. And there's been a lot of weeks where I've missed the episodes entirely. So it's like, I want to know what's happening right then, but I actually have to go back because it's like a long running story. So I'm like, well, I'm missing things. So it's there's a lot of episodes and a lot of like detail that I'm missing. But like video podcasts that I watch, like Ask a Mortician on YouTube, those are snippets of like 25-minute, I can finish them. So I like doing what you do, Heidi, of, having a longer podcast to sit down and actually focus on, because a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, I don't get anything done if I don't sit down for at least 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I need those longer things in order to encourage me to actually get a good chunk of stuff done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
You
having
don't
the
have to be
shorter
like
ones-
switching and finding a new thing to listen to.
Yes, exactly.
You know what's really good, and I don't know if you guys listen to it, but the 1619 podcast.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
on
which
my
corresponds, with the New York Times Magazine thing, but like that you kind of have to listen to I felt from start to finish,
Yeah.
because there's such a story there.
Mm-hmm.
And takes up a good chunk of time, because I found I couldn't stop listening,
Mm-hmm.
I did that with Dolly Parton's America.
Oh, yeah,
that's
that's
called. Yeah,
yeah.
I kind of binged out on that. So
Yeah,
Well, they
well,
also
because
talk
Dolly
about-
Parton is a national treasure. So
Yes, she is.
it's
Well, it's like I also want to talk about podcasts because I want suggestions, because I have such a hard time settling on something that I like and watching it regularly. So like I'm looking for a horror podcast because it's October and I want all of the spooky things all the time.
what about the one in the Mitten one? It's all about like Michigan ghost stories.
I'm gonna look at
I
that.
should remember what it's called, because it's Krista.
Oh, it is?
A library worker.
No way.
Her and her friend, and I think the library has a hand in producing it. Boy, I'm feeling really prepared right now.
okay.
Well, we're kind of all over the place and talking about a lot of different things.
Oh,
I did, and I have a Zoom meeting or a Zoom movie night every week with friends from around the country, and one of them was a guy that I met for the first time, because it's a big group of people and we don't always all make it to the same movie night every week. And he was talking about his like horror comedy podcast. So I had to put that on my list of like, okay, that's a good one to listen to. But I was like, well, I would have loved to have your podcast like 3 weeks ago. So
maybe it's
I
Haunted.
guess I'm just gonna have to play catch up.
Yeah, it must be called The Haunted Mitten, I think is the one I'm thinking of.
Okay.
So ghost stories in Michigan. So yeah.
I know I saved
I don't know if that's kind of horror you want, or if you want actual like.
It is. Well, and I wanted something that was more stories, less my favorite murder. Because I didn't want real things. I dropped out of police procedurals and horror stuff like that because it was just too realistic.
Yeah.
And because I'm using these things for escapism, I'm like, I don't want it to be real, which is kind of silly, but crap. Oof. I'm not gonna be able to find it.
I also used to listen a lot, less so now, to the Moth Podcast, which they used to do that. I mean, probably they're not now, but here in Ann Arbor, have those event nights. But that's good because you can find all kinds of things on the Moth.
Yeah.
Where it's like sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's just a good story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what's nice too. If I find, because it's on the weekend, like NPR has a lot of their shows that are stories, so I'll just run with that, and those are always really good. And I like now that they have Science Friday. It's not on Friday; it's on like Sunday, but it's.
Yeah, I love Science Friday.
Yeah. I love Ira Plato. Gosh,
I love his voice.
The name of the podcast I was looking for is How to Kill a Piano. It's fantasy horror.
Oh.
Which when he pitched it, it sounded really cool. And they're short-ish episodes of about they're between 15 minutes and a half an hour.
Okay.
So they're a little on the shorter side. But the descriptions looked really fun and sounded really cool. So something to add to my list, along with the Haunted Michigan.
It can be tough though finding podcasts because it's like you'll read the description, you might try one out or a couple out, and then after a while you're like, no, actually I don't like this one. So it can be just like starting a book. Sometimes you have to get into it 100 pages before you figure out, no, I'm really not going to read this. But but then that can be frustrating too. It's like you're trying to work on something and you're like distracted by like, do I like this podcast or not?
I know.
That's why I add like 10 or 12 things to my watch later list on YouTube, and then it's just like, if I don't like it, it's skips. I can't do that with Pandora. I can do that with YouTube. So
Yeah, that's true.
Okay with that. So thank you everyone for joining us today for episode 23 of Crafty Chat. We'll be back in 2 weeks for episode 24. In the meantime, until we see you next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and don't forget to love each other. Bye, guys.
Bye.